Okay, well, I come from a long line of show business people. My grandfather was a big star in vaudeville. You know what vaudeville was? Well, vaudeville was the most popular form of entertainment before there was radio and television. Uh, People would go out to theater, live theater, and vaudeville was a variety show, only it was live. And
Right.
acts would tour all around the world. And my grandfather and his family were flamenco dancers, and they were discovered dancing in South America, I think in Argentina, by a woman who brought them, introduced them to Flo Ziegfeld, who was the king of vaudeville at the time, and they became headliners in vaudeville. And my grandfather met my aunt, my mother, or my grandmother. She was a Ziegfeld girl who was sort of like the early version of the Rockettes.
Okay.
And then so he was a big star in vaudeville, and he became. They had three kids, and one of them, the oldest, was my aunt Rita, who was a big movie star in the 40s. You're probably too young, but her name was Rita Hayworth, and she was like the biggest female movie star in the 1940s. She was bigger than, I don't know, bigger than anybody now. It was huge, and so that's my show business background, and because of that, I knew that it was a very difficult life, but I really didn't have a talent for anything else. I tried hard not to be an actor.
Oh,
I really tried. I when I was in school, I thought, well, what else can I do that I enjoy? I thought, no, I'll learn to speak Spanish. I'll be a Spanish major. I'll go to college, be a Spanish major. The only problem was that they didn't offer Spanish as a major at my local junior college. So I thought, well, I'll take some drama classes and until I find something that I like as much as acting. And that's what I did. And I never found anything that I liked as much and that I was any good at all. So it was kind of default. I just kind of fell into it. And I trained, I went to Cal State Long Beach, and then I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. And one of my classmates was Dennis Haysbert. I don't know if you know who that is by name, but he's the All-State spokesman, the good hands guy.
yeah.
And Stephanie Kramer was one of my classmates. She was on Hunter. The full colleagues. And I struggled for a long time doing theater and the occasional film. Just terrible movies. Well, they're fun, but they're silly B movies. I was always a stupid bad guy, crazy bad guy, or something like that. And some TV shows. I was on an episode of Star Trek. You like Star Trek?
Yeah, I saw that you were on that.
I was on. Yeah, I was playing an alien. Dr. Garen, alien, Asia Q, was one of the doing the voice work when I was. I had a lot of friends who were making their livings as actors, and I was not at the time. At first, I was. I did children's theater for about 3 years, and then I did I had to do other things. I sold sandwiches in office buildings. I've been kicked out of almost every high rise in Los Angeles selling sandwiches in offices. And
Oh,
yeah, and oh God, I had a job where I tried. I never succeeded, but I tried to sell art over the telephone, unseen, just
oh,
picking up the phone and calling art galleries and saying, "Hey, I got this kind of art. You like this?" And didn't do too well, too well with that. Although there are people nowadays, I'm sure, who can do it, still do it. And then I done all kinds of things. Well, one day. I had done, I was at a friend's house and I was painting their house just to get some money. And my friend, he was his name is Steve Kramer. Do you know Steve, heard of Steve Kramer?
yeah.
So he's big writer and director and actor in anime. And he was doing this show called Soccer Boy. That was the name of the show. And it was about World Cup soccer matches throughout history. And because it's World Cup, they needed people who could do a lot of accents and dialects, which I'm good at. So his wife, Steve's wife, Melora Hart, she's big in anime too. She kept telling Steve, you should hire Richard. Try Richard. He's good with all these dialects. And Steve didn't want to because it's a it's it, show business is a very kind of a fearful thing. Nobody wants to take a chance. And renting a studio is very expensive, and you don't want to hire somebody and pay them money and not have them be able to do the job. And so Steve, not knowing if I could hit sync or anything like that, he was very reluctant to do it. But I guess he was kind of desperate for people who could do accents and dialect. So he kind of reluctantly agreed to hire me to stand in the background and do voices, just background voices, nothing real specific.
Right.
And during that session, he said, "Richard, come on out here and step up to the mic and see, do this one line." And the way it works when you're recording something, they give you 4 beeps. The first 3 beeps you hear, and the fourth one is silent. So when the imaginary fourth beep, that's your cue to start talking. And your
Yeah.
job, your dubber, is to put the voices in the mouth so it looks like that character's actually speaking. So I walk up, didn't really know what was going on, and I knew that on the fourth beep I start talking. So I did one sentence and I hit it perfectly, and one take and it was done. And after that, he said, "Well, step up and do this guy." So I did, 1 or 2 or 3, lines through the day. Well, it turned out the other people he'd hired to for that day to do background voices, they were also, a lot of them were dubbing writers and directors and actors themselves. So
Mm.
we got along. It was a good day. It was fun. Everybody had a good time, and they said, "Hey, this new guy, this guy's good." And suddenly, I'm starting to get work, and I got work, hired for other episodes, and then I got an audition um, for a show called Eagle Riders. I don't know if you ever heard of that,
Mm.
but um, there was an actor. They had already started dubbing it, and there was an actor named Bob Bergen. Well, there still is an actor named Bob Bergen, but he'd been hired he'd been cast as the lead in the show, and he quit because he got the job at Warner Brothers doing the voice of Porky Pig, and
Oh,
so he
yeah.
quit. And so he'd already done 10 episodes, something like that. So they had this big open call of people to replace him in this role of Hunter. I just remember the character's name. It's Hunter. He was the pilot. And I sounded just like him. Apparently, I sounded so much like him that I got the job, and we didn't have to do some of the efforts and sounds because we sounded so much alike. So because of that, I got the job, and they got it. After that, they hired me over at Saban to do some more jobs and more jobs. And then one day they asked me to do um, um, Samurai X.
Yep.
And I guess that's the one most people know me for. You know, a funny thing was on that Eagle Rider show, the guy that played my co-pilot on that show, his name was Joe, was Bryan Cranston.
Yeah. Yeah.
You may have heard of him. He was a anyway. So that's my showbiz background story. I tried everything I could to not be an actor, but it didn't work out.
I thought maybe your first major role in anime would have been in Ninja Scroll, the movie.
Yeah. Well, my first major role was that Hunter thing on Eagle Riders.
Oh, okay.
After that, yeah, that was the lead in a series. And then after that, they hired me to do the voice of Lance in Super Pig. I don't know if you ever heard of that. And I just did one series after another for a while. And actually, Kenshin was one of my first ones. I did one version. It was 100 episodes, and then a year later, Bang Zoom wanted to redo it. First, it was called Samurai X, and then Bang Zoom redid it with different writing, different scripts, and I got cast in the same role. It was called Rurouni Kenshin when Bang Zoom did it.
Yeah.
And so I've literally done over 200 episodes of when you count all of them that I've done of those of that particular series.
Right.
It was a good series too. It was fun. You know?
And before I would move on to focus on Kenshin, I know you were Vega in the Street Fighter series and movie.
Was I? You know what happens is strange. There's a few characters that I know that I've got it listed, and I honestly don't recall. I probably would have to see it, because what happens when the thing for certain ones I remember and certain ones I don't. Like I know that I've done certain ones over many years.
Right.
Most of the time, what happens when I don't know if the other actors have said this, but you know, you get a call and say, "We want you to come into the studio for something." Half the time, you don't even know what it is, and you walk in the studio and they say, "Okay, we want you to do this voice. This is what the character's like. Do your best, you know," and you do your best to sound like their character, but you don't see the whole show.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. I have never seen an entire episode beginning to end of Rurouni Kenshin.
Oh.
Yeah, what you do is you go. Well, if you think about it, it makes sense. You go in. The studio time is expensive. You got an engineer, you got a director, you got to pay those people, you got to pay the actors, and the dubbing process, especially back then, it was a slower process because they didn't have Pro Tools and things like that back in those days. What they did was they would literally go over one line, maybe one paragraph at a time, until you got the sync right and the intention right and it sounded right. and you would just go over and over and over. It was a very slow process. So there's no point. I mean, maybe I was pretty fast. I could get in maybe, I guess, 25 to 30, what they call loops in an hour. And most people were a little bit slower than that. But if you think about it, if the other people are waiting for their turn, you're paying all those actors who just sit around in the kitchen or the green room waiting for their turn, or they're sitting in the studio waiting while one guy goes over and over. Each actor goes over and over and over. So what they do is they take one actor and they just do his lines. That's it. And then you skip to the next line. And sometimes you'll have 5 lines in a whole episode. And so that's how it's done. So you only see parts of episodes. I can tell you something funny. My girlfriend, there's an old Korean movie. It's called Old Boy. Have you ever seen it? It's a good movie. If you ever get a chance to see it, it's a good one. Anyway, so my girlfriend wanted to see this movie, so she bought it, and we brought it home. It's on a DVD, and we put it on my player. And at the time I had a small television. Well, the original series is in Korean. It's, so neither one of us speak Korean. And we had the option, the DVD gives you the option, well, you can either watch it dubbed or you can see it in subtitles. So I had a small TV and I said to her, it's going to be hard for us to read the subtitles on the screen. Why don't we just listen to the dubbed version? She says, okay. So I'm watching the movie and I'm listening to the voices, and suddenly I recognize Steve Kramer's voice is coming out of one of the characters.
Yeah.
My buddy Steve. Anyway, I'm listening, and as the movie goes on, there's this character that I should have been dubbing. Young guy, young voice. Anyway, it wasn't me. And I started to get really upset and concerned because he was really good. It really looked natural. The acting was really good. And it didn't even look like it was dubbed. It just looked like it was live. And at the end of the movie, I was really upset. I kept thinking, who is this guy? This guy is really good. And maybe there's a reason I'm not getting more work. It's this guy. I don't know who it is, but I better find out. He's awfully good. I can understand why people are hiring him instead of me. And at the end of the movie, I thought about it, and I said, well, I better replay this. So I rewound it, and I started listening to it again. Suddenly I recognized some of the scenes looked a little familiar. And then I got up to the part where this young character is, and I remembered, oh, that's me. That was my voice.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even remember doing it. I didn't even remember the scenes. The second time around, it hit me. Oh, God. Of course. So that's what happens. You don't get the whole idea. When you're doing it, you only get partial little snippets of it. So sometimes people say, well, can you tell us about Vega? And I said, I can't tell you much because I don't remember that much. Sometimes I don't even remember the names of the projects. Sometimes they change the names, and the names they're a little bit strange.
Mm-hmm.
Pink girls who eat something like that, anime, or like. So that's, some things I remember. I know I was on some episodes of the Power Rangers, and things things like that. If I had my resume in front of me, I'd be able to maybe tell you some of the things I've done better. But that's the life of a dubber.
Do you remember being in Nightwalker though? Because that's another one of my favorite animes. Because you were the
Which
lead.
one?
It's called Nightwalker.
Oh yeah, the Nightwalker. That was one of my favorite ones.
Yep.
That was like a killer, a vampire killer,
Yep.
or something like that. Yeah. I like that because I thought of myself as Humphrey Bogart
Oh yeah.
in that character. I tried to kind of imitate him, and yeah, I like that. That was a real dark one, and I kind of got to be my Humphrey Bogart self in that one. That was good. And I liked it. That was an entertaining one too. I was actually disappointed that it didn't have more episodes. I
Yeah.
really liked that one.
That's good to hear. Yeah. And then, do you remember being in Trigun too?
I don't.
Okay.
I know the name. Was that the one where I played Legato?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I know snippets of it again, and I know people like that one character. He's kind of a bad guy character, and yeah, well, my evil self. My evil self came out in that one.
Right.
But I'll bet you anything that you could tell me more about Trigun than I could tell you.
Okay. Actually, my main hobby is actually.
Unless if you really wanted to what?
Oh, I was just gonna say my main hobby is collecting production art, like cells and stuff for anime, and I have a sketch of Kenshin from the first episode.
That's him. Did you make that? Did you draw that?
No, it's like for the cell process, so it's actually directly from the animation studio.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's one of the my favorite things that I own.
Cool. Well, that's nice. I'm glad that you like it so much. That's for sure. But that was a long time ago. You must have been a little kid.
Yeah, well, Kenshin was on TV here when I was growing up.
Where was that?
It was all over the U.S. It was on Cartoon Network.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't know it was on Cartoon Network.
yeah, it was
I know
like
some of the things I did. Yeah. Some of the things I did on Adult Swim were on Adult Swim.
right. Yeah.
I know that.
What about
Cool.
Yeah, I've been wanting to show you. So, um, since you were going on to video games, since you were in the Dynasty Warriors series, you were Pang Tong in like every single game.
Yeah, there's another one that I can't. I don't have much to tell you. There's probably a lot of yelling and screaming. I remember being Assassin's Creed
Okay.
because there was a lot of work on that, and they kept calling me in, and but I really. It's funny how you guys, the fans, tend to remember things, and they all for me it kind of blends into one long fight because somebody's always fighting in a video game, and after a while you lose track of who's fighting who, and again, you know more about that game than I do for sure.
Okay.
Absolutely for sure. I did a version of Halo, one of the iterations of I think it was Halo 6.
Okay.
And when I recorded, they didn't even tell me it was Halo. I had no idea. They didn't tell me. They didn't tell me the title. They just said, "Okay, you're doing this Sergeant I think he was Mendez or something like that. I said, okay. Later I find out it was Halo. Had no idea.
Oh, okay.
If
Yeah.
I'd have known, I would have asked for more money, I guess.
What about with Digimon?
Digimon. Well, I played so many characters on Digimon. I think I played Piximon,
Yep, that's right.
Guard, Guardomon,
Mm-hmm.
and I know I got several characters. But that was another thing. They call me in. They say, okay, it's for Digimon. I said, okay, good. And they said, okay, we're going to zip up to line 35. You play this guy. Okay. So what is it? Well, does he talk like this? Yeah, okay, that sounds good. You talk like that? Okay, that sounds good. So I have no idea. No idea. Some of the dubbers, I think, really kind of research and they actually know because they go back and they buy the series or they buy the game or what have you. But I'm always trying to get more work, so I'm always looking for what's ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't focus too much on what I've done in the past because it's the past. You know,
Right.
it doesn't do me that much good. You know, I have a friend, not just for voice. I have a friend. He was telling me he was an actor for a long time, and he said about 4 or 5 years ago, he was watching an episode of some television show, and there was a guy on it, one of the actors, and he kind of looked familiar, but he didn't know who it was. He looked familiar to him, and he kept watching and watching. And at the end of the show, it dawned on him. He said, "Oh my God, that's me
Oh.
30 years ago." He didn't even recognize his own self,
Mm-hmm.
not just his voice, his own face, anything. He didn't recognize any of it. But that's what he was doing. He did the show and moved on to what was next. That's all, you know. So a lot of actors are like that. You know?
So I do want to go back to Kenshin and ask a few things about that. For one of them, I guess, can be what was your personally hardest experience voicing him?
Oh, that's a really good question. I tell you what, sometimes it was really hard to understand why my character was saying something.
Mm.
In the second version, Rurouni Kenshin, I was being directed by a Japanese lady
Oh, okay.
from Japan, very sweet. And there are times when they're doing their fights, right? Their sword fights. And I would get very upset because it just made me crazy. The bad guy would say, okay, I'm going to attack you using the dragon attack. And then Kenshin would say, well, if you're going to use the dragon attack, I'll just counter that with my lotus position. And they'd go back and forth talking about what they were going to do before they did it. And it would make me crazy. I'd say to the director, I'd say, what are you writing like this for? Why are they writing like this? This is so stupid. If I'm a baseball pitcher, I'm not going to yell to the hitter, okay, I'm going to throw you a curveball on the outside corner. You know, that's crazy. And she would say, please, that's the lines. Just say the line. And I'd say, you're making me crazy. If they're going to fight, they should just fight. They should be insulting each other. They should be saying, I don't know what they're saying. But poor, the poor director. And so during the middle of this time, I got a job on a movie. And one of the characters in the movie was an actor whose hobby was kendo. And you know what kendo is? It's Japanese fencing.
Yeah.
They have the samurai swords. And he was explaining to me what kendo is. And he says to me, okay, kendo is Japanese fencing, but it's not like Western style fencing. And when the opponent sees what position you're attacking from, he counters that with another position. And then when you see his position, you counter that with another, and it goes back and forth. And these guys, I've never seen an actual kendo match, but apparently nobody does anything, but they strike poses, different positions, until somebody makes a mistake or somebody else sees an opening. And then he goes and he strikes and he makes the kill. And I realized, well, they couldn't do that. That's what they're trying to do in the series.
Yeah.
They can't just show two characters changing positions. They have to explain what they're doing. And that's why they were explaining. That's why they're telling each other, I'm going to attack you from the dragon position. Oh, I'm going to counter that from the butterfly. Well, in that case, I'll go to the cocoon. Back and forth. Now it made sense. So I had to tell the director when I finally got back from the movie. I said, okay, I understand now. I'm very sorry I was such a pain in the neck. Now I understand. So, yeah, that was actually the most difficult part about doing it, is understanding why. Why are they saying these things? Why are they talking like that? And I think it's more authentic than the first version that I did, which was called Samurai X.
Right.
And the writers and the directors at the time, they didn't know about kendo either. And so instead of being authentic and talking about the positions they were going to attack from and why they were going to be affected, that kind of thing, they just said, oh, we'll just insult each other. We'll trash talk each other for a while until we actually start fighting. And at the time, I thought that was a better way to do it. But then I learned about kendo. So, yeah, that was the most difficult part. Sometimes it's hard in general. If they want you to do a really emotional scene, it's really, for an actor, you need a lead up. Why am I crying? Why am I angry? And you don't really get that opportunity when they just cue up the tape to, this is where your line starts and you're angry here, so better be angry. Well, geez, the last take I did, it was funny. Okay, nice shoot. It's not always easy to come up with the emotion and make it believable and honest, but that's the job. That's what we do. So
Right.
I guess I did a pretty good job. People seem to like the outcome.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Night Stalker was probably one of the easiest jobs I had.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because he was always this. He's always being tough, always being Humphrey Bogart, always being the tough guy. So that was kind of easy for me. Plus, I always wanted to be in a film noir movie and be the detective, the tough detective. And the fun part, most part about Kenshin, I really like the funny things, where he get hit on the head and the bump comes up. I always enjoyed those things. the fights between Yoki and what's her name. I always enjoyed those things. You know, the little fun thing, because that series got pretty intense, especially the last few episodes.
Right.
You know, they get really intense. So,
Well, I was going to ask next what your
yeah.
approach was to when Kenshin's Bato side comes out, like how you approach that.
Well, you just have to tap into whatever anger you have as a person. Whatever you're doing when you're an actor, if you're playing a bad guy, we all have those parts in us. We all have a little bit of sadist in us, and we control it. You know, we have anger in us, and most of the time we control it. Or you know, those who don't are generally in prison. You know, but acting is good. We get to release that. So you know, and Kenshin always had that smoldering rage in him that was brought about when he saw injustice. Well, we all have that.
Right.
I mean, right? I mean, the reason Raiders of the Lost Ark was so successful is because we all want to go out and kill a bunch of Nazis. You know, we all have that in us. You know, we all want to be the good guy. We all want to, you know, defend the weak and the helpless, and we all want to do that. We all get angry when we see injustice. You know, and so it's no different. You just put yourself in the shoes of the character, and see, man, these guys are really bad. And I just believe that you are the greatest swordsman in the world, and that you're going to get some justice, you know, and you're the sharpshooter, you know,
Yep.
the quick draw. And you're gonna defend the helpless lady and the, you know, who's being bullied by the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
In real life, most of us can't do that, you know, but we can in our imaginations. And when we get to voice a character who can, then it's a real, we get to live out our fantasies, basically.
Yep.
Right? So it's a good way of acting is good to live out your fantasies for the most part. Well, sometimes if you're a bad guy, then you have to know how to contain it, you know, as evil as the bad guy is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, otherwise you get yourself in big trouble. You know, so you have to know when to turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
And otherwise you get yourself in a lot of trouble. So, but you know, I've had, but you just have to be willing to lose yourself in the character, whatever the character is. If he's a good guy, if he's an alien space creature, if he's a transvestite, transsexual, whatever. I've done all those things. I played gang members, and if you're going to be believable, you have to believe that for the time that you're on the set, you have to believe that that's what you are. I'm the toughest guy in the room. I'm the scariest guy in the room. Now, if you met me in real life, you'd think, no, this guy's kind of dorky. But you know, in on the stage or whatever, they go to a lot of people, go to a lot of trouble to make you believable. They put you in costumes, they put you in makeup, whatever it is, and they put you in a set. They tell you what words to say. sometimes they choreograph your fight for you, and you just make it look like you are the bad guy or the good guy. You've heard stories about most of the so-called bad guys that play bad guys in Hollywood and movies. Most of them are really nice guys.
Mm-hmm.
Danny Trejo.
Yeah.
I did a movie with him. Really nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
He used to be a bad guy in real life, but as he says, prison straightened him out. No, he's a really nice guy. Really nice guy. A lot of fun, cracking jokes all the time. But when he's in the movie and playing a bad guy, you don't want to mess with him. You wouldn't want to mess with him. But in real life, you can mess with him all you want. He's just a fun guy. And the opposite you've heard about, and we've all heard about, leading men or women who we think are, God, they seem so nice. And then you hear what jerks they are in real life, things like that. It's so disappointing,
Right.
But that's actors. We make a living pretending to be things that we're not. So,
and another thing in regards to Kenshin, is it true that Mona Marshall was considered to be the voice of Kenshin before you were? Do you know anything about that?
I didn't know it was Mona. She would have been good. I knew they were considering a female.
Yeah.
Because the original Japanese was a female.
Yeah.
So I know they were considering. I know they were considering going with a female. Glad they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if it was Mona specifically, but I knew that they were thinking about a female. And Mona's one of the nicest people on the planet too.
Right.
So, did she tell you that?
No, it's on like forums and stuff on the internet that she was considered to be the lead before you were.
I suppose it's possible. I don't know. I don't know for sure. They don't tell actors very much.
Right.
So, but she ended up playing several characters in the series anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you also remember, since it was several episodes long, like the final fight between Kenshin and Shishio? Do you remember if there was any kind of emotional process for that?
Yeah, I vaguely remember how, it seemed like every storyline ended with a big fight. And as the series went on, it got more and more emotional and more and more. I remember the fight between Kenshin and Shishio.
Yeah.
Shishio. The guy was all wrapped like the mummy.
Yeah. Right.
And I thought after that, well, what are they going to do after that? How are they going to follow that? Because that was really emotional and all that. But this one was like psychological. It was almost like Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy. It was getting into the psychological things with Kenshin. It was really actually it was kind of draining to do it. To come up with some of those emotions, trying to do it as it was a little draining actually, because you're angst and anger, and as an actor you're trying to find different ways of expressing it. Otherwise, it's always the same. That gets boring to the audience. But that was, I do remember that was a long, drawn-out fight. It was a long, drawn-out process. to get to that point. I remember that much. And it's like, wow. I remember thinking, what are they going to top this with? And it turns out, because that was the end of the that was the end of the series.
Right.
But yeah, it's funny when you do a show for that long. I mean, that was a full year, and then I did it before that for another full year
Yep.
of working on it. And boy, there's kind of like when it's over, there's kind of like a, oh gee, what am I going to do now? Kind of a feeling. Naruto is the same. Naruto is the same thing.
Mm.
You know, I just had a small part in Naruto, but I mean, I did that show for years.
Mm.
And when they told me this is the last, I walked in and said, "This is the last episode." I said, "Yeah, the last episode for the season." No, the last episode. And it was like someone pulled the rug out from under me. Really? Oh man! Now what do I do? You know, and the funny thing is, there's always something to do next. It's just that you kind of get invested in the character. Like I said, I don't always know the character, and I don't always know the storyline, but I do know that this is somebody I'm familiar with. And when that's gone, you're like, oh boy, now what? Now what do I do?
And do you think that you're probably like most attached to Kenshin in terms
But
of?
that's the actor's life.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a good. Yeah, sure, because I was so long. It was 2 years of my life. Well, it wasn't all 2 years of it, but it was a main focus of what I was doing and because I did every episode twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it stands to reason I'd be more attached. There are other things that I've done on camera that I've been invested in that I was sorry to see it stop. But as far as anime, that would be Kenshin. Yeah, because I got to have the range of emotions. I could do comedy. I could do drama. I could be goofy. Kenshin's goofy. Kenshin's gentle, tender, and then he's very angry and times, and you got to do a lot of different things. As an actor, you get to do a lot of different things. I even got to sing a few times, which is not easy when you have to sing songs that I don't think are all that memorable. And you're trying to sing as best you can to somebody's tune that I don't think it's all that good, but I don't get to do my Dean Martin style of singing. I have to sing it like Kenshin would sing it, as close as I can. I actually have a pretty good singing voice, but you'd never know it from the times when I've sung for Kenshin.
Mm-hmm.
So that's yeah, it's Kenshin. But one time there was some other show that I was doing. Don't ask me what it was, because I wouldn't be able to tell you. But I walked into the studio and they said, "Okay, say these lines." And there was so much Japanese. There was this, and I don't speak Japanese. I was having a hard time. I'd have to do several takes to say the names of some of the things to say in the Kenshin series. But this thing just had one after the other, and I kept muffing it up. And, I was going way slower than I usually do. And I was embarrassing. I don't know. If I had known beforehand what these words were, I would have practiced it, but I just walked in and they hit me with all these words. But fortunately, I worked 2 days on it. The first day was Friday. Second day was Monday. And I said, look, I know you guys don't like us to take the scripts home with us, but I would like to make me a copy of this script. I will go home over the weekend and I will practice these words and this chant or whatever, so that when I come in on Monday, we can come back and redo them, and it'll be a lot easier because I'll be familiar with the pronunciation. So they let me do it. I went home and I practiced for 2 days. I practiced the words and the names and everything. And on Monday, I came in and just as an investment, as far as my professional pride and my willingness to do more than was required or expected of me in order to get the job done. Because most of the times we just show up and the director will say, okay, you say this word like this. And, it takes sometimes a few takes to do it. But that particular one, there were so many words, I just couldn't get through it. So I said, okay, let me practice this on my own without having to waste your time. And they said, okay. So that was an investment. I take a certain amount of pride in that I had that much initiative to do that.
Right. And when I talked to Dorothy, Fawn, and Wendy, and they said that Kenshin was like one of the few exceptions with anime that you guys all recorded together instead of separately.
I didn't. Maybe they did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's possible they did. Wendy played 2 different characters based on the version.
Yeah.
Which version? So maybe they did. That's interesting. I always was by myself.
Okay. And how was the with the way that he talks in the Japanese? How was and like saying that I am and whatever? Was that kind of frustrating to get a handle on?
Yeah, I always felt that was really awkward. Hard to make that sound natural.
Mm-hmm.
And I always wished that they had come up with a different catchphrase. But they don't listen. I'm not the writer. I'm just the actor. And they said, okay, you got to say that I am. Okay, I'm going to try to make that sound realistic. And I wish they'd come up with something that was a little more, and I am, but Kenshin says it, according to this writers, these writers, he says that I am. So I did the best I could to make it sound natural and spontaneous, and that was one of the most challenging things about playing Kenshin, actually.
Right.
Those I ams. that was. Did they strike you as being odd when he would say it?
Since I got used to it pretty fast, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? Did you ever see the movie Casablanca?
Mm-hmm.
When Humphrey Bogart looks at Ilsa and he says, "Here's looking at you, kid."
Right.
And remember the first time I heard that, I said, why is he saying it like that? Why is he saying it that way? Everybody says, "Here's looking at you, kid." Yeah. No, he decided he's going to say, "Here's looking at you, kid," and everybody remembers it.
Right.
It's become a classic line of Hollywood film lore. So maybe that's a classic line of anime lore now. That I am.
Yep. And when Wendy also said that you mostly do ADR for movies and stuff now.
Yeah, I do. Well, I do dubbing, and I've done some projects for dubbing on Netflix. There's some shows on now,
Yep.
I'm, live action, real, people on Netflix, and yeah, doing some. I've done some ADR. That's called looping or whatever on
Right.
background voices. Um, it pays pretty well, and you get residuals and da, 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 and I know people make a lot, good money doing it. For me personally, I appreciate the work when I get it. I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun most of the time. Sometimes it's not, but most of the time it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little frustrating because I think I should be the one in the front of the camera.
Yep.
And, uh, and it's dialed down so much, most in the background. It's just this non-specific kind of, you're not even aware of it. It's subliminal almost. And once in a while, they spike something and you hear it. And but sometimes, most of the time, you don't. But you have to be very meticulous about it, because if you go to a movie and you hear some, let's say the movie takes place in, I don't know, let's say it takes place in 17th century England, and all the main characters are talking to each other and saying things like, "Forsooth, thou lookest sickly today," and that's the way they're talking, um, and uh, and then you hear in the background somebody saying, "Yeah, I went out to eat, and that food was the bomb. It was the best." If they spike that up and you hear that in the background, the whole movie's ruined. Becomes a laughing stock on all the people who worked on the sets, did it for nothing. All the costumers did it for nothing. All the people making the wigs did it for nothing. The writers put all that research in for nothing because of one jerk who didn't do his homework, and somehow, even though it's subliminal, you just have to take it very, very seriously and professionally, and, and do your research, and so that you're talking about things that are current within the time frame of the movie, and talking in a way that is in keeping with the way people spoke at the time, using phrases that they would use, slang that they would, the slang of the 1950s is a lot different from the slang of today. And you can't use the slang of today in a film that takes place in 1940. You can't do it. You'll ruin the movie. So there's a lot of effort. It's almost as much effort as being on the set. In a way, and being in front of the camera, in a way, it's even more, because you're there for the whole day for the most part, working. And when you're on this in front of the screen, there's usually a lot of downtime where you're in the dressing room waiting to go on in front of the camera.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's I'm glad to when I get the dubbing work, if I can do a good job and make it sound realistic, especially for live action. I really enjoy that. It's challenging and I enjoy it. Um, and if I can get um, off camera work and doing, I take it seriously. If 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 it's just background. Uh, And certainly if I do it on camera, that's, I take that just as seriously as if I'm dubbing. The preparation is even more because you have to memorize your lines and that sort of thing. And your movement. You can't walk in a period piece. Say you're doing a piece in 16th century Europe. You can't walk the same way as you would walk down the street in present times.
Right.
People walked different. They held them and carried themselves differently. Sometimes it was because of the cost of the clothes that they wore, but it's also the 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 period of time. It's the customs of the time.
Right.
So yeah. So that's plus I'm writing my own, getting my own movies up, trying. So if you know anyone who has $300,000 if they don't know what to do with, get them in touch with me. I got a movie I want to make.
So I guess the last thing I could ask you is I like to close out my interviews with asking what you'd want your legacy to be.
My legacy, well, I'm not in the position of a Tom Hanks or somebody like that who can pick and choose the projects and the characters that he does. I'm not in a position to be able to say, no, I'm not going to play that kind of a character. I'm just a working actor. My legacy, if you want to call it a legacy, is I hope that people will believe the things that I do when I do them, and that I've entertained them, that I've helped the writer and the director transport the audience into their world, which is an actor's job.
Mm-hmm.
Actors are just we help the storytellers. The storytellers are the writers and the directors who envision the story, create it, and the actors help with that. And hopefully my legacy for the fans will be of someone who helped, who entertained them and made them believe in whatever they were watching for a half hour or an hour, in case of a film, 2 hours, and that they believe, well, every time I saw Richard Cansino in a movie or heard his voice, I really enjoyed what he was doing, even if it was stupid.
Mm-hmm.
He made me laugh, and sometimes I thought he'd make me angry. I just, he was a really good actor. That would be as far as other actors, I would hope my legacy would be that I was really professional and easy to work with and fun to work with, and that my approach to acting made them better.
Mm-hmm.
That I made them better actors. Just my approach and how I prepared and did my work. But for the audience, just hope that they would hear that I was involved and say, "Oh, good." I always like when who was in something.
Right.
That's that would be my. And the other legacy would be, man, he sure made a lot of money. I'm just kidding. Although that wouldn't be a bad legacy either. So hopefully that I helped the fans. You know, when I did, I've only been to one convention,
Yep.
which really was very moving. Fans would come up to me and tell me, you know, I named my son Ken after Kenshin. I had two people told me that. Somebody else, people would come up to me and say, you know, I had a very difficult childhood. But I would watch Kenshin, and it would help me get through my most difficult period of my life, which never occurred to me.
Right.
That I might have that kind of effect, that the character might help them that way. I mean, that's a pretty good legacy too. That I was actually able to help people with their lives. I mean, that's a legacy. When I was doing children's theater, that was probably, I thought that was maybe the most important acting work I'd ever done. It's just children's theater, but I could see the effect that it had on the kids, how it made them think, and maybe I changed a few lives, changed a few attitudes, just do that. And some of these people would tell me, well, you really helped my life. You changed my life. So that's a very humbling thing when you realize it. Because, you know, we just go into those booths that are covered in foam rubber and a microphone. There's a little window, and usually there's a director and an engineer on the other side of the window, and that's it. And you have no idea that that's really having an emotional, a visceral impact on people. You just have no idea. I had no real conception of it until I went to that convention, and I said, "Gee, okay, I'm not just shouting into a void. It is affecting people, which is, as an actor, as any artist, that's what you hope to do. You hope to move people, make them think, you know, make them laugh, you know, maybe you make them cry, maybe just entertainment. But if you can help them with their lives, make their lives actually better, make them better as people when they're young, teach them life lessons that they can use when they're older, that's a good legacy too. Maybe the most important of all.
Right. Well, thanks. I'm glad that I got to be the first person to ever interview like this.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you. Nice to talk to you. Thank you for wanting to talk to me. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you too.
Well, you take care then. And
Yeah.
if you want to, you know, again, follow up, I'm available.
Okay.
Okay. You take care then.
Yeah, you too. Bye.